The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline walls reaching toward a dome that captured the light of distant stars. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a tapestry of evolutionary diversity that had taken millions of years to achieve. At the center of it all stood a simple podium where the newest applicant species awaited judgment. Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation adjusted her dress uniform one final time, her fingers briefly touching the small metal pins that denoted her military service. Around her, the low rumble of alien voices created a symphony of skepticism that needed no translation. She had learned enough of the common galactic languages to understand the whispered comments flowing through the assembly. "Primitive," hissed the serpentine Veltar ambassador, his forked tongue tasting the air with disdain. "Their technology barely qualifies as spaceworthy." The insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their species. "Look at their representative," chittered their speaker. "No natural weapons, no armored carapace, no enhanced appendages. How did such a species even survive to reach the stars?" High above the assembly, Chancellor Mordun of the Krillian Empire observed the proceedings with the detached interest of a being who had witnessed countless such evaluations. His people had ruled the galactic core for over 10,000 years. Their massive frames and natural psionic abilities making them the undisputed arbiters of galactic civilization. The humans below seemed especially fragile, even by the standards of the weaker species that occasionally sought membership. Sarah maintained her composure despite understanding every word. The briefings had prepared her for this reception, but experiencing it firsthand was another matter entirely. Humanity had spent 2 centuries clawing their way to the stars, overcoming resource scarcity, political divisions, and the harsh realities of space travel. Now they stood before the greatest assembly in known space, seeking recognition and trade rights that would secure their species' future. The Chancellor's voice resonated through the chamber with the authority of millennia. "The species known as humans seeks membership in our council. As is tradition, we shall evaluate their worthiness across the standard criteria: technology, culture, military capability, and contribution potential." A holographic display materialized above the podium, showing technical specifications of human spacecraft. The assembled representatives studied the data with expressions ranging from mild interest to outright amusement. The numbers told a story of determined engineering rather than elegant advancement. Thick armor compensating for inferior shielding, redundant systems making up for technological gaps, and weapons that seemed almost quaint compared to galactic standards. "Their vessels rely heavily on kinetic projectile systems," observed the crystalline Hexarch delegate, their voice producing harmonic overtones that gave their words an ethereal quality. "Most curious. We abandoned such primitive methods eons ago in favor of directed energy and exotic matter weapons." The Veltar ambassador's eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. "Perhaps they never learned to harness proper energy sources. I see they still burn chemical fuels for atmospheric propulsion. How delightfully primitive." Sarah stepped forward when prompted, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite her lack of vocal augmentations. "Honorable representatives, humanity acknowledges our technological limitations compared to your advanced civilizations. However, we believe our unique perspectives and determination could contribute valuable insights to galactic society." Perspectives? The question came from Admiral Zex Corvin of the Hegemony Fleet, a towering creature whose exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles. What perspectives could a species offer when they have never faced true adversity? Your homeworld shows no signs of serious predation, no evidence of survival against overwhelming odds. You developed in a peaceful garden, sheltered from the harsh realities that forge strong species. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Humanity's history was written in blood and struggle, from the early days of survival against predators and natural disasters to the wars that had nearly destroyed them before they reached for the stars. But she had been instructed to present humanity as peaceful and cooperative, traits the Council supposedly valued. "We have faced challenges," she replied carefully. "Natural disasters, resource conflicts, the difficulties of uniting our species under a common purpose. These experiences taught us resilience and adaptability." Laughter rippled through the assembly. The Krillian Chancellor gestured with one massive hand, his psychic presence pressing against Sarah's mind like a gentle but unmistakable reminder of his power. "Child, you speak of resource conflicts and natural weather as if they were meaningful trials. The Hexarch fought a 30-million-year war against entities from parallel dimensions. The Veltar conquered 47 worlds while being hunted to near extinction by machine intelligences. The Zephyrians rebuilt their entire civilization after their homeworld's sun went supernova." He leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying Sarah with the intensity of a being who had seen empires rise and fall. "What has your species accomplished that would earn a place among such proven survivors?" Sarah felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. The prepared speeches about human art, literature, and scientific achievements seemed suddenly inadequate. These beings had witnessed wonders and horrors beyond human imagination, and they saw her people as nothing more than another primitive species seeking protection under the Council's wing. "We survived ourselves," she said finally, the words coming from a deeper place than her diplomatic training. "My people spent millennia killing each other over differences of skin color, religious beliefs, and territorial boundaries. We created weapons capable of destroying our entire world and came within moments of using them, but we chose not to. We chose to reach for the stars instead." The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in dismissive chatter. The concept of a species threatening its own existence seemed to amuse rather than impress the assembled representatives. "Self-destructive tendencies are hardly unique," commented the Ethereal Collective's spokesman, their translucent form shimmering with boredom. "Most species go through such phases during their technological adolescence. The fact that you barely avoided extinction is not an achievement. It's evidence of poor evolutionary judgment." Admiral Zex Corvin's mandibles clicked with contempt. "Your military assessment is equally unimpressive. Chemical explosives and kinetic weapons, no energy shielding worth mentioning. Your largest warships would serve as adequate patrol boats in civilized space. What could such a force possibly contribute to galactic security?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah knew the Admiral was right by conventional standards. Human military technology was laughably primitive compared to weapons that could crack planets or tear holes in space-time itself. Earth's greatest battleships were cobbled together from the best materials humanity could produce, armed with weapons that traced their lineage back to gunpowder and shaped charges. But she also knew something these advanced beings seemed to have forgotten in their millions of years of technological evolution. Sometimes the most primitive solutions were the most effective, especially when facing enemies who had grown complacent with their superiority. "Our weapons may seem primitive," Sarah acknowledged, "but they serve our purposes. We believe in building tools we understand completely, weapons we can maintain and repair under any conditions. Simplicity has its own strength." "Strength?" The word came from Speaker Velnash of the Zephyrian hives, delivered with the particular disdain that intelligent insects reserved for clearly inferior reasoning. "Your entire species could be eliminated by a single hegemony dreadnought. Your weapons couldn't penetrate our atmospheric screens, much less our ship armor. What strength exists in such weakness?" The question sparked a new round of commentary from the assembly. Representatives began sharing assessments of human military capability, each evaluation more dismissive than the last. They spoke of humans like specimens in a laboratory, interesting for their quaint determination, but ultimately irrelevant to galactic affairs. Chancellor Morden allowed the discussion to continue for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. The preliminary assessment is complete. Humanity demonstrates adequate technological development for spacefaring status, acceptable cultural complexity, and... He paused, consulting the holographic display. Marginal military capability suitable for local system defense only. Sarah felt her heart sink as she recognized the tone of dismissal. She had heard it before in briefings about other species that had been granted limited membership. Second-class citizens allowed to trade under council supervision, but excluded from meaningful participation in galactic affairs. However, the Chancellor continued, the Council recognizes the potential value of diversity in our assembly. Therefore, we grant provisional membership to the species known as humans, with restrictions on military deployment beyond their home system and mandatory technology sharing agreements to accelerate their development. The decision hit Sarah like a physical blow. Provisional membership was barely better than rejection. It meant humanity would become a client species, dependent on council oversight and unable to defend their interests independently. Worse, the technology sharing requirement would essentially strip Earth of any hope of developing their own advanced capabilities. "Honorable Chancellor," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest, "humanity respectfully requests full membership status. We understand your concerns about our current capabilities, but we believe—" "Child," Admiral Zexcorvin interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military command. "You misunderstand your position. Provisional membership is a gift we offer despite your obvious limitations. Your species contributes nothing of value to galactic civilization, except perhaps curiosity about how such primitive beings manage to achieve spaceflight." The insult was deliberate and calculated. Sarah could see it in the Admiral's predatory gaze, the way he leaned forward slightly as if expecting her to retreat. Around the chamber, other representatives watched, with the detached interest of beings witnessing a minor diplomatic incident. But something hardened in Sarah's expression. The briefings had prepared her for dismissal, even for condescension. They hadn't prepared her for the casual cruelty of beings who viewed her entire species as an amusing footnote to galactic history. The weight of human struggle, human achievement, and human dreams crystallized into a moment of absolute clarity. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying a new edge. The emergency klaxons that suddenly pierced the council chamber's ancient silence hadn't sounded in over 3,000 years. Representatives who had been lounging in their seats with dismissive boredom were suddenly upright, their various sensory organs focused on the tactical displays materializing around the chamber's perimeter. What they saw defied immediate comprehension. "Impossible," breathed Speaker Velnash, her compound eyes processing the incoming data streams faster than most species could think. "The perimeter sensors show massive spatial distortions approaching the system. Energy signatures are unknown. Configuration patterns match no known ship classifications." Admiral Zexcorvin's expression shifted from condescending amusement to professional alarm in the span of a heartbeat. His clawed hands danced across holographic controls, summoning detailed tactical assessments that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Fleet composition appears to be approximately 200 vessels of varying sizes. Technology base shows characteristics I've never encountered. They're moving through hyperspace with efficiency ratings that exceed our theoretical maximums. Sarah watched the chaos unfold around her with growing unease. The timing seemed too coincidental to be natural. Her diplomatic mission had been planned for months, coordinated with council schedules that had been set years in advance. The arrival of an unknown fleet at precisely this moment suggested either incredible coincidence or deliberate planning. Chancellor Morden's massive form had gone absolutely still, his psychic presence expanding throughout the chamber like a vast net seeking information. I sense no familiar mental patterns among the approaching vessels. The crew signatures are alien, truly alien. Not merely another species we haven't cataloged, but minds that operate on fundamentally different principles. The revelation sent a chill through the assembly that transcended species boundaries. The Galactic Council represented the pinnacle of known evolution, a collection of intelligence and capability that had conquered every meaningful challenge the universe had presented. The concept of encountering something genuinely unknown was both thrilling and terrifying. Defense Fleet Omega is moving to intercept, Admiral Zex Corvin reported, his professional calm masking what Sarah suspected was genuine concern. Full-strength deployment, 47 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers, and supporting vessels. Whatever these intruders represent, they will face the full might of galactic civilization. The main display shifted to show the massive hegemony fleet moving into defensive positions around the Council station. Each dreadnought was a kilometer-long monument to advanced warfare, bristling with weapons that could sterilize planets and shielded by technology that bent the laws of physics to deflect incoming attacks. The sight should have been reassuring, but something in the Admiral's bearing suggested he wasn't entirely confident in the outcome. "Unknown vessels are dropping out of hyperspace," announced the Krillian sensor operator. "Distance, 12 million kilometers and closing. They're maintaining formation, but not responding to standard communication protocols. Energy readings are... Chancellor, I'm detecting weapons signatures unlike anything in our databases." Through the chaos of preparation and alarm, Sarah found herself studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Her training as a military officer had taught her to read battlefield dynamics, and what she saw troubled her more than the immediate threat. The unknown fleet was approaching with textbook precision, their formation suggesting both discipline and preparation. This wasn't a random encounter or exploratory mission gone wrong. This was a planned assault. "Attempting communication on all known frequencies," reported the Ethereal Collective's communications specialist. "No response to standard diplomatic protocols. They appear to be scanning our defensive positions with remarkable precision, almost as if they're already familiar with our capabilities." The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Galactic Council's defensive strategies were closely guarded secrets, known only to the highest levels of military command. The idea that unknown aliens might possess detailed intelligence about Council capabilities suggested either a massive security breach or something far more disturbing. Admiral Zex Corvin's mandibles were clicking in rapid patterns that Sarah had learned indicated extreme stress among his species. "Defense Fleet Omega reports ready for engagement, all vessels at maximum alert. However..." He paused, consulting additional data streams. "Fleet Commander Vel Corvin is requesting clarification on rules of engagement. The unknown vessels are not exhibiting overtly hostile behavior beyond the unauthorized approach." "Not hostile?" The question came from the Hexarch delegate, their crystalline form resonating with harmonics of disbelief. "They approach our most sacred chamber with a fleet of unknown capability, ignore all diplomatic overtures, and demonstrate detailed knowledge of our defensive positions. How is this not an act of war?" Chancellor Mordun's psychic presence pressed against every mind in the chamber as he wrestled with the decision. His species had ruled galactic civilization for millennia by making precisely these kinds of choices: when to fight, when to negotiate, when to show strength, and when to exercise restraint. But the current situation fell outside all established protocols. "Open fire only if fired upon," he decided, finally. "But prepare for immediate escalation if these intruders demonstrate hostile intent. All defensive systems to maximum readiness." The order rippled through the fleet, and Sarah could feel the tension ratcheting upward with each passing second. Through the observation ports, she could actually see some of the larger hegemony vessels maneuvering into attack positions, their weapon arrays charging with energies that made the space around them shimmer like heat mirages. Then everything changed. The first impact came without warning, striking the lead hegemony dreadnought with a beam of coherent energy that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. The ship's shields, designed to deflect anything the known universe could produce, simply ceased to exist. Not overloaded, not penetrated, just gone, as if they had never been there at all. The dreadnought itself lasted approximately 3 more seconds. "Fleet Commander Velkorvan's ship is gone." Admiral Zexkorvan's voice was hollow with disbelief. "Complete destruction. No debris field, no energy signature, no trace. It's as if the ship simply stopped existing." The tactical display updated to show the unknown fleet had closed to engagement range while maintaining perfect formation. Their weapons fired again, and 3 more council vessels vanished in flashes of light that hurt to look at directly. The remaining fleet began evasive maneuvers, but their movements seemed sluggish and predictable compared to the alien vessels. "All ships! Scatter formation!" Admiral Zexkorvan bellowed into his communication array. "Maximum dispersion! Do not cluster your positions!" But the order came too late. The alien fleet had apparently anticipated the tactical response, and their next volley caught a group of cruisers attempting to reposition. 7 more ships simply ceased to exist, their crews and centuries of accumulated technology deleted from reality with surgical precision. The council chamber erupted into chaos as representatives realized they were witnessing not just a military engagement, but a complete technological mismatch. Species that had conquered galaxies were watching their finest ships destroyed like insects swatted by an indifferent hand. "This is impossible," the Veltar ambassador was repeating, his serpentine form coiled in distress. "Our shields are based on fundamental principles of physics. They cannot simply be ignored." Speaker Velnash's voice carried the metallic edge of panic as her people faced something their hive mind could not process. "Zephyrian combat algorithms are failing to predict enemy movement patterns. Their tactical responses operate outside known parameters. This is not conventional warfare." Sarah found herself moving toward the primary tactical station, her military training overriding diplomatic protocol. The display showed the Council fleet's position in detail, and what she saw made her stomach clench with recognition. The alien ships were using classic encirclement tactics, but with a precision and speed that suggested either extensive practice or previous knowledge of Council defensive patterns. "Admiral," she called out, her voice cutting through the cacophony of alarm. "Your fleet is moving into a killing box. They're herding your ships into predetermined positions." Admiral Zexkorvan turned toward her with predatory intensity. "What did you say?" "The enemy formation is designed to channel your fleet's evasive maneuvers into predictable patterns. They're not just shooting at your ships. They're controlling where your ships can go. It's a trap that was set before the battle began." The implication was staggering. Not only did the aliens possess superior firepower, but they had detailed knowledge of Council tactical doctrines. They knew how the fleet would respond to each attack pattern, and they had positioned themselves to exploit those responses with devastating effectiveness. Another wave of destruction swept through the Council fleet as Admiral Zexkorvan frantically transmitted new orders. But changing tactics in mid-battle was like trying to redirect an avalanche, possible in theory, but requiring more time than the situation allowed. 17 ships lost, the tactical officer reported with mechanical precision. "Enemy casualties? 0! They're not even taking defensive actions against our return fire. Our weapons appear to be ineffective." The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. The assembled representatives were watching their finest military assets, ships and weapons that had conquered countless worlds, prove utterly inadequate against an unknown enemy. For species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, the experience was beyond humbling. It was existentially terrifying. Emergency protocols are now in effect, Chancellor Morden announced, his psychic presence radiating grim determination. All civilian vessels are to evacuate the system immediately. Military vessels will maintain defensive positions to cover the evacuation. But even as he spoke, the alien fleet was demonstrating that evacuation might not be an option. Their ships had spread throughout the system with impossible speed, cutting off every potential escape route. The Council's fastest vessels found themselves facing alien interceptors that moved like thoughts given form. "They're jamming hyperspace egress points," the Ethereal Collective's navigator reported. "No ship can achieve translation to faster-than-light travel. We're trapped in normal space with hostile forces controlling all exit vectors." Sarah studied the tactical display with growing horror. The alien fleet wasn't just winning, they were demonstrating complete mastery over the Council's capabilities. Every defensive measure was anticipated, every tactical response countered before it could develop. It was less like a battle than a carefully orchestrated demonstration of superiority. "There has to be something," Admiral Zex Corvin muttered, his claws clicking frantically across control surfaces. "Some weakness we can exploit, some pattern we can break. No fleet is invulnerable." But as the minutes passed and the destruction continued, that assumption proved increasingly hollow. The alien ships moved with purpose and precision that suggested not just superior technology, but superior intelligence. They weren't fighting the Council fleet so much as educating it about the true nature of power in the universe. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the violence stopped. The alien fleet maintained their positions throughout the system, but their weapons fell silent. The surviving Council vessels, less than half of the original force, hung in space like wounded animals, afraid to move lest they trigger another wave of destruction. Into the sudden silence came a new voice, speaking in perfect galactic common, with pronunciation that suggested intimate familiarity with Council languages and customs. "Attention, Galactic Council. We are the Devourers, and we bring you a message from the dark between stars. Your time of dominance is ending. Your technology, your double the silence that followed the Devourers' ultimatum stretched across the Council chamber like a physical presence, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the distant reports of damage assessments from the surviving fleet. Sarah stood at the center of it all, feeling the weight of galactic civilization pressing down on her shoulders with suffocating intensity. Chancellor Morden was the first to speak, his ancient voice carrying undertones of disbelief and growing anger. "Explain this, human. How does your primitive species factor into an assault by beings whose technology makes ours seem like stone tools? What connection exists between humanity and these Devourers?" The question echoed through Sarah's mind as she struggled to process the situation. Humanity had barely achieved stable interstellar flight, possessed no weapons capable of threatening advanced civilizations, and commanded no resources that would interest cosmic predators. Yet somehow their species had become central to a conflict that threatened to reshape the galaxy. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her voice carrying absolute honesty that made several representatives shift uncomfortably. "Humanity has had no contact with any species called the Devourers. We've never encountered technology like theirs. Until today, we weren't even certain other intelligent life existed." Admiral Zex Corvin's mandibles clicked in rhythms that suggested barely controlled fury. "Yet they speak of testing your people specifically. They offer to spare portions of our civilization based on human performance in some unknown trial. This cannot be coincidence." Before Sarah could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated again, flooding the space with the alien voice that had already redefined their understanding of galactic power dynamics. "Your confusion is understandable but irrelevant. The connection between humanity and our interest is not something your limited perspectives can comprehend. However, we will provide clarification sufficient for the test ahead." A new holographic display materialized above the assembly, showing images that made even the most advanced representatives struggle to process what they were seeing. Vast machines moved through the void between galaxies, each one larger than star systems and bristling with technology that bent reality around its presence. Entire civilizations were being harvested. Their populations, resources, and accumulated knowledge absorbed into structures that defied easy description. "We are collectors," the voice continued with the casual tone of a being discussing a hobby rather than galactic extinction. "For eons beyond your comprehension, we have traveled between galaxies, gathering species that demonstrate qualities worth preserving. Intelligence, resilience, adaptability, creativity. These traits earn a place in our collections. The rest becomes raw material for our journey to the next galaxy." The images shifted to show processing facilities where civilizations were sorted and cataloged like insects in a museum. Advanced species that the Council would consider godlike were reduced to specimens, their greatest achievements preserved as curiosities, while their populations were integrated into vast collective structures. "Your galaxy has been under observation for approximately 50,000 of your years," the Devourer spokesman explained. "During this time, we have cataloged and evaluated every significant civilization. Most show promise in single areas. The Krillians possess impressive psychic capabilities. The hegemony demonstrates military efficiency. The Hexarch have achieved remarkable harmony with their environment. However, none exhibit the combination of traits we find most valuable." Sarah felt her throat constrict as the terrible logic became clear. "What traits?" "Adaptive resilience under absolute pressure, the capacity to innovate when facing extinction, the willingness to sacrifice individual welfare for species survival, the ability to unite diverse factions against existential threats." Most civilizations develop these qualities briefly during their early evolution, then lose them as they achieve comfort and stability. The holographic display shifted again, this time showing Earth's history in compressed format. Humanity's violent past played out in accelerated sequences, wars, disasters, near extinctions, survived by desperate innovation and stubborn refusal to surrender. The assembled representatives watched with growing understanding as they saw a species that had faced apocalypse repeatedly and emerged stronger each time. Humans retain these qualities despite achieving interstellar capability. The voice observed with something that might have been approval. They remain adaptable, innovative, and unified when threatened. More importantly, they have not yet grown complacent with their achievements. This makes them potentially valuable additions to our collection. Chancellor Morden's psychic presence radiated waves of indignation that pressed against every mind in the chamber. "You speak of collecting our species like artifacts. We are the inheritors of millions of years of evolution, the builders of galactic civilization. We will not submit to becoming exhibits in your museum." Laughter echoed through the chamber, alien amusement that carried harmonics of sound no organic throat could produce. "Your protests are irrelevant. The decision to harvest this galaxy was made long before your civilizations achieved sentience. However, the humans present an opportunity for negotiation." The display changed once more, showing tactical assessments of human military capabilities. The data was far more detailed than anything the Council possessed, including analysis of weapons systems that shouldn't have been detectable by conventional sensors. "Human military doctrine shows interesting characteristics," the Devourer continued. "They favor adaptability over technological superiority, redundancy over efficiency, simplicity over sophistication. Their weapons are primitive but reliable. Their tactics emphasize survival rather than dominance. Most intriguingly, they appear capable of effective coordination without psychic linkage or hierarchical control structures." Sarah began to understand where the conversation was leading, and the realization filled her with equal parts hope and horror. "You want us to fight for you?" "Not for us. Against us. We will provide a challenge suitable for testing human capabilities. If your species demonstrates the qualities we value, we will preserve portions of this galaxy as a reservation for continued evolution. If not, we will proceed with standard harvesting protocols." The chamber erupted in voices from dozens of species, all demanding details about this test, protesting the arbitrary nature of the decision, or proposing alternative arrangements. The cacophony was cut short by a sound that no one present had ever heard before, the screaming of space itself, as reality tore open just beyond the station's defensive perimeter. Through the rent in space-time came something that defied easy description. It was simultaneously a ship and a weapon, a vehicle and a living creature, a testament to technology so advanced that it operated on principles the Council's greatest scientists couldn't even theorize. The thing was roughly spherical, perhaps 10 kilometers in diameter, but its surface writhed with patterns that existed in more dimensions than standard visual sensors could process. "The test begins now," the Devourer announced. "Humanity will face one of our minor combat units in single combat. No assistance will be permitted from other species. The engagement will be conducted using only human weapons, tactics, and personnel. Success is defined as forcing our unit to withdraw or inflicting sufficient damage to require repair." Admiral Zexcorvin stepped forward, his warrior's instincts overriding diplomatic protocol. "This is absurd. Human vessels cannot possibly threaten a unit of your capability. You've just demonstrated superiority over our most advanced ships. How can primitives using chemical explosives hope to succeed where plasma cannons and antimatter warheads failed?" "That question contains the essence of the test," came the reply. "Observe." Sarah's blood ran cold as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. 3 human ships were approaching the system, vessels she recognized as the escort fleet that had accompanied her diplomatic mission. The UES Indomitable, Defiant, and Relentless were respectable ships by human standards, but they were insignificant compared to the alien construct that waited for them. "No," Sarah whispered. Then louder, "No, those ships aren't prepared for this kind of engagement. They're armed for escort duty against pirates and raiders, not whatever that thing is." "Then they will adapt or die," the Devourer replied with casual indifference. "This is the essence of the test. Can humanity function effectively when facing impossible odds? Can they innovate solutions to problems that have no conventional answer? Can they fight with courage when victory seems impossible?" The human ships had detected the alien construct and were already maneuvering for combat, their primitive sensors struggling to analyze the threat they faced. Sarah could imagine the chaos aboard those vessels as crews trained for conventional warfare tried to comprehend an enemy that operated outside all known parameters. Captain Maria Santos of the Indomitable was the first to establish communication with the Council station. Her voice crackled through the speakers with the controlled tension of a professional officer facing the unknown. "Council Station. This is Captain Santos requesting immediate tactical assessment. We're reading one massive unknown contact and evidence of significant fleet engagement. Please advise on threat status and rules of engagement." Sarah grabbed the communication console before anyone could stop her. "Maria, this is Commander Chen. Listen carefully. You're facing an enemy with capabilities far beyond anything we've encountered. Your orders are to engage and force them to withdraw, but they've made it clear that this is some kind of test. The future of human civilization depends on your performance." Silence stretched across the communication channel as Captain Santos processed the implications. When she spoke again, her voice carried the grim determination that had carried humanity through countless disasters. "Understood, Commander. Indomitable acknowledges test conditions. All ships, this is Santos. We're going to show these alien bastards what human ingenuity looks like when backed into a corner. Defiant and relentless, implement Doctrine 7. Full coordination, maximum aggression, and remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. The three human ships accelerated toward their impossible opponent, while the assembled galactic representatives watched in fascination and horror. The tactical display showed the massive disparity in size, firepower, and technological sophistication. It was David facing Goliath, except David was armed with a slingshot while Goliath wielded the power of stars. Then the first human weapons fired, and something unexpected happened. The alien construct's defenses, whatever exotic technology protected it from the Council fleet's advanced weapons, reacted strangely to humanity's primitive projectiles. Kinetic rounds fired from magnetic accelerators struck the creature's surface and actually penetrated, creating visible damage that made the alien writhe with what might have been pain. "Impossible," Admiral Zexcorvin breathed. "Our plasma cannons couldn't even scratch that thing's surface. How are metal slugs causing damage?" The answer came from an unexpected source, the Ethereal Collective's science specialist, their translucent form shimmering with sudden understanding. The defensive systems are designed to counter energy weapons and exotic matter attacks. They analyze incoming threats and adjust reality around the construct to negate them. But kinetic weapons are too simple, too fundamental. The defenses can't adapt to something that operates on pure Newtonian physics. On the tactical display, the human ships were demonstrating the kind of coordination and innovation that had carried their species through countless crises. The Defiant launched a spread of nuclear missiles, while Relentless fired a barrage of depleted uranium rounds, forcing the alien to choose which threat to prioritize. Meanwhile, Indomitable was doing something that made even experienced military observers gasp in admiration. "They're using their ship as ammunition," Sarah realized, her voice filled with equal parts pride and terror. "Santos is preparing to ram that thing." The alien construct finally responded to the human attack, its surface erupting with weapons that bent light and twisted space into concentrated streams of destruction. But the human ships had already scattered, their primitive maneuvers paradoxically effective because they operated on principles too simple for the advanced weapons to predict. Defiant took a glancing blow that vaporized half its hull, but the crew managed to maintain firing solutions even as their ship tumbled through space-trailing atmosphere and debris. Relentless lost its main engines but continued firing with secondary weapons while using attitude thrusters to maintain combat effectiveness. And Indomitable, despite being the smallest ship in the engagement, kept accelerating directly toward the alien construct with the grim determination of a species that had never learned to surrender. The impact, when it came, lit up space like a newborn star. Captain Santos had timed her ship's destruction to coincide with a full spread of nuclear warheads, creating a concentrated explosion that actually forced the massive alien construct to withdraw several thousand kilometers. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 human ships had been destroyed, their crews killed in a battle they couldn't possibly win. But they had achieved the impossible. They had forced an alien weapon to retreat, damaged something that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations couldn't even scratch. "The test is complete," the Devourer announced, and for the first time, its voice carried undertones that might have been respect. "Humanity has demonstrated the qualities we value. They adapted to impossible circumstances, innovated solutions to unprecedented problems, and maintained coordination under conditions that would have shattered most species." The alien fleet began withdrawing from the system, their impossible technology folding space around them as they prepared to depart. But their spokesman's final words echoed through the chamber with the weight of prophecy. "This galaxy will be preserved as a reservation for continued evolution. However, understand that this is not a reprieve. It is an opportunity. Humanity has shown promise, but promise must be fulfilled through growth. We will return in 1,000 years. When we do, we expect to find civilizations worthy of our attention." As the last alien ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a system littered with debris and traumatized survivors, Sarah found herself facing an assembly of representatives who no longer looked at humanity with condescension. Instead, she saw something she had never expected from these ancient, powerful civilizations. She saw hope. "Isdom, your very existence are about to become irrelevant." The voice paused, letting the words sink into minds that had never contemplated their own mortality. "However, we offer one chance for survival. There is among you a species that shows potential, primitive by your standards, but possessing qualities we find interesting. The humans will be given an opportunity to prove their worth. Should they succeed, we may consider sparing a portion of your civilization as subjects rather than eliminating you entirely." Sarah felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her as the implications became clear. Somehow, humanity had become central to a conflict they didn't understand, against an enemy that made the galaxy's greatest powers look like children playing with toys. "The test will begin shortly," the alien voice continued. "We suggest you prepare your champions well. The cost of failure will be measured in extinction." That made several nearby representatives look up in surprise. "You speak of strength and military capability as if they're the only measures of worth. Perhaps you've forgotten what it means to fight for survival instead of conquest." The chamber stirred uneasily. Questioning a senior hegemony officer wasn't just diplomatically dangerous, it was potentially fatal. But Sarah continued, her words falling into the silence like stones into still water. "You want to know what humanity contributes? We contribute the perspective of a species that clawed its way to the stars without ancient empires to guide us, without inherited technology to ease our path. We built everything we have from raw elements and stubborn determination. And maybe, just maybe, that makes us something you need more than you realize." The confrontation hung in the air like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Ancient beings who had never been challenged by such a primitive species found themselves facing something unexpected. Not desperation, but defiance, backed by absolute conviction. And in the depths of space surrounding the council chamber, unknown sensors began detecting the first signs of an approaching fleet whose intentions would soon reshape everything these sophisticated beings thought they knew about strength, survival, and the cost of underestimating humanity.